Hey everyone, Dr. Greg here with just a quick announcement before we started today's episode. And I really need your help from my loyal listeners, so if you can help me with this favor, I'd appreciate it. I've been creating some videos that solve specific psychotherapy issues, like the hidden ways we self sabotage and why most mental health advice doesn't work for high performing individuals, over on my YouTube channel in the past few weeks. Now, I wasn't originally planning on bringing the audio of these to the podcast feed, but a few people have asked me about it, so I wanted to leave the decision up to you all. If you think there'd be value in listening to the audio versions of these videos, please head on over to my YouTube channel and leave a comment down below and let me know. The link is in the description below. I would love to hear from you. If you'd rather keep the podcast feed exactly how it is, no problem. I am happy to do that because, quite frankly, I am just thrilled and honored and grateful that all of you continue to support this show as it is and as you have been over the years. So, again, link in the description. Please let me know one way or the other. And now, on to today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing you the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist, Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I am really excited to be bringing you this episode because I have yet another action-packed, informative interview with someone who is all the way out on the East Coast. I did not ask how they like their cheesesteak, but I suspect she can let us know as we dive into it. For those of you out there that have heard of the treatment modality hypnotherapy, it's always been something that's interested me, but I've never had any formal training in it. And I happened to come across today's guest, which is Miss Kisha Reynolds, who has her own practice out in Philadelphia. It is 321 Deep Sleep. Is that right?
Yes, hypnotherapy. Yes.
And she is here to inform us all about hypnotherapy, its benefits, and how it can improve our lives. So, Miss Kisha Reynolds, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right, we're happy to have you. So, sort of to kind of kick things off, it'd be great to hear who are you and how
Well,
did you get
sure.
to this point in
Yeah.
your life?
Yeah. I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist, but my journey was not directly here. I will say that I have always had a love for mental health, though. It has always been something that has been with me, but at the time, we're going back probably like late 90s now, so I'm kind of dating myself. I went more so in recruitment, in HR. And, I often like to say that human resources is I guess, if you will, mental health, if you career when it comes to corporate, So I went in there and I worked in different aspects of human resources, but found a love in recruiting. And I think the reason why is because when you are matching different personalities with different skill sets and the personalities when it comes to the employers that they will be working with, you really get to know the candidates or the people behind there. As a recruiter, you get to really talk to them and understand why they're looking for the type of roles that they are. But you also, in doing that, see a lot of the trauma and things that come with how they may have left their previous employment or, some of the stressors that they place there because, many times when people leave to go to another opportunity, a lot of times it's not so much as the opportunity, but it's more so management. People, majority, when they leave because of management or there's someone on that management team that they don't particularly care for or not vibe with. Yes, sometimes people just say, okay, well, I really need to kind of go in a different direction. And that does happen. But a lot of the time, it has to do with the internal culture, that within the organization. So, in doing that and hearing that, over time, I then started out with doing coaching as it pertained to doing a resume and interview coaching, things of that sort. At first I started with that, and at the time, I put myself as, hey, resume lady, actually, and I had different, career coaching and interview coaching packages, and then it kind of evolved, from there, uh, along with that, all during that time frame, I was dealing with something called body focused repetitive behavior, okay, which is something I'd also explain and get into a little bit later, or BFRBs for short. And it took me some time to understand what that was, but I was dealing with that along with this, okay, and yet not really fully being able to grasp what that was, okay, and how it was affecting me, and it would go in and out of remission. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. All the while I'm still helping clients, okay, and this went on for a while, and I've been a recruiter for about a good 25, 26 years, okay. And then at one point, I said, you know what? I really want to move past recruitment and kind of really go in and continue to really focus more on the mental health piece. And I knew this was what I was supposed to do, was because, as I said, I'd always had this love of mental health to begin with. And it came back to me. I always say, when it's something that you are meant to do or you're calling, because it keeps coming back. Even if you kind of put it to the side for a bit, it will continuously come back, or at least that has been my experience. And that's what happened to me. And I finally decided to really just kind of answer that, call. And so I went in the way of hypnotherapy, because I wanted to be able to connect with the subconscious mind. Okay. And in doing that, I also found the hypnotherapy can be a modality and an excellent modality for a lot of different mental health issues. Okay. So I then said, okay, well, if that is something that can help in terms of rewiring the mind, because essentially that is what it is. It literally it creates new neural pathways in the subconscious. Okay, so I'm saying, if I'm able to, hypnotherapy is able to do this, then why can I use it to rewire my own mind? Okay, so that
So
is how I came to
you were
this.
sort of the guinea pig on
I
yourself.
was the guinea pig on myself. I tested this, out on myself, and I had success with it. Okay. And so, but it was more than that. It was, once I got into it, hypnotherapy not only gave me another avenue in terms of a career, okay, but it brought me a connection in terms of people. I can't tell you how many people that now I've been able to connect with, and who we actually stay in contact with. I stay in contact with after my sessions with them, because to me, I check in even after, the sessions are over. I still check in, see how they're doing, and in doing so, you develop, sometimes, a good, you develop good relationships with people. Okay. And it has brought me full circle. It has brought me to helping people, not just here within the United States, but globally. And doing these podcasts has really opened me up. Just in being able to meet other podcasters such as yourself. Who I've become now. Friends with. And who we keep in contact, and it has brought me hypnotherapy has brought me more than just the compassion of helping people, which was first and foremost, but it has brought me also now a community of people,
That's
for friends, so I really do, owe a lot to the profession, and am now still now continuing on my academic journey of becoming a clinical hypnotherapist. So I'll be wanting to talk to you about that after this, your experiences from the academic side of it.
Oh man, that's a whole other podcast episode, let me tell you, just talking about grad school. I went through it twice, so I could fill up many episodes on it, I'm sure. Um, but that's great that you were able to make that transition from the recruiting into a brand new field with hypnotherapy. You tested it out on yourself. It turns out that it
Yes.
worked, and now you're an internationally renowned hypnotherapist. And I
Right.
wonder if you can talk a little bit about what hypnotherapy is. I mean, you mentioned that it can reprogram the brain and train
Yeah.
new neural pathways, but what is it in practice, and really how does it work for people that you serve?
Okay. I would love to do that. And also, Greg, just this is so exciting for me because in talking to this and also you from a clinical side of it, from a psychotherapy side of it, you know, this is, just amazing. So I just kind of, love this. But basically what hypnotherapy or hypnosis, it's a very natural state. Believe it or not, we all go in and out of it every single day, and I'll give you a couple of examples that I like to use so that people can understand what it is. So, okay, if you can think about, you are leaving, just say you're somewhere that you typically go every day, be it to your 9 to 5 or a family member's house or whatever. And can you remember a time where, say, you're leaving, we'll just call that destination A, and you are going to destination B, you're going home. And you've done this so much, you've done it all the time, like you've committed it to memory. And sometimes you may be in your car, and you're listening to your favorite song or podcast or just in deep thought. And all of a sudden you just kind of end up there to your destination. And you haven't necessarily thought about how you got there. You just know that you did get there. Okay. You kind of zone out a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm here. That is a form of hypnosis. You basically, what you were thinking about was your point that you were more focused on. Okay, because really it's a natural state of focus. Okay, that's what it is. It's a natural state of focus, and it bypasses the critical mind. And we'll get into what that is in a few seconds when I talk about the critical mind. But that is one example of it. Another is if you are happening to be watching television and say someone comes in and they happen to startle you or they call your name and you may not necessarily hear it the first time, but then they keep calling you, you kind of do one of those like, oh, okay, you're there. I didn't see you before or hear you. That is because that narrowed state of focus at that time was the television. Okay. And that is also a form of hypnosis. So it's almost like this, it feels like a trance like state where you are just hyper focused into something else. That's a form of it. Okay. And it's triggered by a lot of different things. It's can be triggered by your environment. Interaction, social interactions can be triggered by movies you're watching, clearly, bliss, even, falling in love. That feeling of, okay, oh my God, that person is so perfect when you first meet them and everything is blissful, and and it's almost like nothing else matters. That person can do no wrong until about 6 months down the line you begin to really, those rose colored glasses, as they say, begin to come down. Okay, so that is also a form of it. But the only difference between that and this is when I'm doing hypnosis, that narrow state of void focus is my voice, and you're focusing in on my voice. So that's essentially what hypnosis is.
I've heard the example of the car before, and it's always very concerning. Even though I do it, here we are driving these massive vehicles, just spacing out in these trance states.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that's how it works. You're right. I mean, we do something so often, or it's just so naturally fall into that easy, relaxed state. In fact, that's part of what I strive for with the meditations that I put up on my podcast here. So then, what would differentiate hypnosis from something like a meditation, and how do you leverage that difference into some sort of clinical benefit for your patients?
Well, to me, I think in terms of when it comes to the differences with hypnotherapy, you are literally doing an induction. You are literally putting this person into a trance like state. So you're going a little bit deeper, okay, than I think than meditation. You are really going very, very deep. So, just to give a little background, to your listeners, when if you I want to talk about something that we call the theory of mind, okay, to give you an idea of how vast the subconscious is. Okay. So the subconscious is made up about 88% of your mind. Okay. Where you are now is like your waking state or your conscious state. So that's 12%. All right. So in the waking state where we are now, you are responsible. You can make decisions. You have willpower. You can do reasoning. You have logic. Um, from hypnotherapy, we don't work with that waking state. Okay. That's someone who was such as yourself, Greg, that you would work with. Okay. We work specifically with that 88%. Okay. So when we speak, and actually, one of the things that I'm sure, have heard of, or when people watch movies, they typically, it's synonymous with hypnosis. Okay. Is that countdown, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it's kind of like this deep sleep type thing. Okay, so the phrase deep sleep is not actually a real sleep. Okay, it really isn't, but it's a very, very it's a trigger. It's a trigger to your subconscious. Okay, so you are still awake when you are in hypnosis. You're just very, very relaxed. And I kind of went around with what you were asking, but basically the difference between meditation and hypnosis is that we are really going very, very deep, and we are purposely and intentionally putting you into a hypnotic state using induction. Okay. And going further and really going deep there. In fact, we even have different deepeners that we use on top of a traditional induction. We even have they're called different deepeners that we use to really continuously go down to a deeper level. Some people need them to really go in to hypnosis, and some people don't. But however you experience it, that's the way and the best way that you are supposed to.
As you were talking about these deepeners, this is a complete tangent, but it's taking me back to when I was an undergrad, and every year they had a hypnotherapist come out. Well, I guess he was more of an entertainer, but he knew how to do hypnosis, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd have
Mm-hmm.
people come on stage, do all these goofy things, like cluck like a chicken or whatever. And it was
Mm-hmm.
always funny to me that he'd just have them listen to his voice, and then he'd have them stare at a light, and
Mm-hmm.
then not all of them, but some of them, their just heads would hang super heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
he could just tell them to do whatever, and they would do it. And obviously, that's the joke in popular media. You can make somebody do something that is ridiculous. But my understanding has always been you can never really make somebody do something against their will or force them to do
No,
something. It's
no.
really maybe their unconscious willingness being let out, I guess. I sort of think about it like if you have too much to drink, your thoughts come
Yeah,
out, and it's kind
yeah.
of the same thing. Is that a
It-
fair
it's
way to look at that?
yeah, very similar. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I get clients sometimes initially who come to me and they want me almost to recreate their and rewire and recreate their whole brain. Okay, so listen, if you don't have a medical background, I wish I could. I cannot make you a plastic surgeon. Like I can't do that. Like I really wish that I could, but I can't do that. So but I get that. Can you make me do this or give me? I cannot. I can only work with what's there. Okay. Now what I can do is, if you are studying for your MCATs and you want to get into med school, I can make it so that you are able to study better, and you receive in terms of like retaining information more and being able to compartmentalize. I can do that. Okay. But I can't do something that already is not there. So thank you for bringing that up. And you are right. So in hypnosis, you cannot go unconscious. Okay. So, and what you were experiencing when you saw that, that is why having this conversations like this is so important, because that was a stage act. That's what it was before. That's what it was for. It was intentionally a stage act that was for entertainment, but very real, very real. It's just that he was a stage hypnotist and I am a clinical hypnotherapist. So it's very different. Okay. We use the modality, okay, but we're just using it differently. He's using that more of, okay, we're going to bark like dogs and all those silly antics, but that's what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to entertain. It's supposed to wow and shock and awe. Okay. I'm using that from a clinical perspective. So I'm using this to help with phobias. I'm using this to help with people who want to show up and attract better partners. Okay. And in doing that, maybe helping them to move from having a disorganized, attachment. Okay. Attachment to a more of a securement attachment. Okay. We can do that in hypnosis. And therefore, by doing that, changing who you attract, who you are, because a lot of that comes from your how you attached, to your primary caregiver, what was taught in that. Okay. Were you taught that you have to chase love? Okay. And then as an adult, even before that, now you're on this downward spiral of chasing validation because of how you attached when you were a baby. Okay. And then the people that did show up in your life later. So I'm able to help with doing that, with maybe changing that into a more of a secure attachment style. Okay. In addition to that, um trauma. Okay. And just and we have I mean, trauma is such a large, a large, map here of trauma. I mean, we have big T's and we have little T's. Okay. And everything can possibly cause trauma in some way, shape, or form. But there's so much trauma, some traumas that really affect how you move through life. Okay. So using it for things like that, anxiety, depression. Now, one of the things that I do and that I encourage my clients to do, I also make sure that I'm also very, very aware of my scope. Okay. I know where hypnotherapy lies and where meeting with someone such as yourself, who is a clinical, psychologist, where that stops, okay? Where one stops, where the other one ends. So what happens is when I'm working with clients, many times I enjoy working not only with them, but also combining and working with their mental health professional, be it a licensed clinical social worker, someone that's a licensed professional counselor, psychiatrist, clinical, psychologist. I will work with them in tandem with helping the client. And it really does bring kind of like a real like a two-prong approach, because what you guys, in terms of in the clinical world, what you call distortions, we call known associations. Okay. So it's the same thing of, that critical self talk, what you've heard, what you have adapted to who you are and what you believe. Okay. And then when someone tries to say to you, oh, well, no, but you are heard and we do love you, you have internalized this so much that it has created this distortion in the mind, okay? And then you are working with it, but from the waking state of getting this person to see that what they feel about themselves in that regard, that's distorted. I do the same thing, but I work from the subconscious level and what we call known association. So you can see how working together, how that would be very, very beneficial to a client.
Yeah, it sounds like it's sort of a two-pronged approach to
Yep, yep,
the same issue. Now,
exactly.
let me ask you this because you bring up an interesting point here. So it's about bringing the patient down into a calm, relaxed, trance-like state. But then
Mm-hmm.
when they're there, what exactly do you do to help them get to a better place? So if we use the example you mentioned of, I want to attract a better partner.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have a patient, they're in that state. What do you do?
So in that, when they're in that state, well, first of all, I'll be honest with you, and like I mentioned to you before, I believe in, okay, first of all, giving thanks. Okay. And gratitude, thanksgiving and gratitude for where you are, because things can always be significantly worse. So I always make sure I always started off with a gratitude. Okay. And from there, once we are, in that state, I start mainly by talking about doing imagery. So that's how it works. We start with imagery, having someone to visualize or picture something in their mind. Okay. And then from there, instituting hypnotic suggestions. Okay. And the hypnotic suggestions can be very different from everyone else. I am a faith based certified clinical hypnotherapist. So, what that means is that a lot of my work revolves around scripture, biblical scripture. And then I create that is indicative to what the person is going through at that time. And then I create a session, hypnotic session around that. Okay. But everybody is different. So this is not a one size fits all approach. What works for some people may not work for others. Okay. And so for the hypnotic suggestions, what I'm saying to them is having them, for example, somebody who um, doesn't quite validate themselves. Okay. So one of my hypnotic suggestions may be that you believe and honor self-love. You honor self-love, okay? And in honoring that self-love and believing in that, then you are validating yourself in a sense, okay? So that might be something that I will say, and it's very powerful. And saying that when that person is under in that, because the subconscious is now taking that in. And as I mentioned before, it's 88% of your mind. So that's a big chunk. So it is taking that in. And typically, what I do is I have people to listen to recordings. So when I meet with a client, when I'm going through, kind of why they are there, I don't record that piece of it. But when I do the inductions, once that's over and I know why the person is there, when I do the actual hypnotic session itself, which is usually about 20 minutes, 25 minutes long in itself, I record that piece. And I give that then to the client and ask them to listen to that a minimum of 4 nights out of the week. Okay. So what that does is that seals in everything that we did during our one-on-one session. And in doing that and listening to the recordings, it also quickens, the space. Typically for a actual program, it usually takes anywhere from 8 to 12 sessions, depending upon what you are working with. Okay. Some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter. Okay. But when you are using the recordings, it kind of shortens that inner the beginning of feeling that turnaround. Usually it takes about 4 to 5 sessions to really start to feel it. When you're listening to the recordings, it kind of quickens that to maybe about three. After 3 or 4 times after listening to it, then you start to kind of feel it, that change. And kind of like what that feels like is it's subtle. So what happens is perhaps something that would have made you look down on yourself or feel that, not really feeling that self love, all of a sudden you feel that about yourself. Suddenly, certain things that you would allow to happen or you would say yes to, you're kind of like, yeah, no, like I'm not going to do that. That doesn't feel right. And by doing that, what you may not one may not know that they're doing at that point in time by saying, okay, I'm not comfortable. I'm not going to do that. You've now set a boundary. You set a healthy boundary that you are not going to go over. And that's progress. That's peace. That's peace.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. Again, we're here with Miss Kisha Reynolds of 321 Deep Sleep. Her practice is going to be in the description. And as you talk, it sounds like it's basically 8 to 12 sessions. Of course, it could vary depending on people's
Right.
needs, but on
Mm-hmm.
average, people give you 8 to 12 half an hours of their
Mm-hmm.
lives,
Right.
and they can completely change how they're interacting with themselves, with others. Again, within reason. You can't,
Yes.
make a gold out of lead, as they say. But
Right.
you can actually alter those things that maybe have kept you, the listener here, stuck in some sort of
Yes,
unhealthy pattern. So
exactly.
you also talked about working with other mental health practitioners who deal with the waking life. And I'm a little curious, at what point do you recognize, hey, this thing that we're trying to deal with, really they need more conscious work around it instead of the unconscious work? Is there a line or
Yes.
something that
Oh,
you can?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. For example, if I'm working with, well, prior to working with someone, I do get to a medical, workup questionnaire where I will ask them, different things they're asked in terms of their background. I'll ask, are you seeing, a therapist already? For example, if someone is experienced or has bipolar, okay, um, I am able to work with someone who is bipolar, but they have to be at a baseline, for example, so that's not something that I would just take on by myself. That would be, something where I would work with a professional, along with a professional such as yourself. Okay. Especially because I'm not able to prescribe medication and I'm not able to really work with anyone when they are in the manic state. Okay. And also, too, because in that state, kind of putting someone into an altered state that could potentially be harmful, okay, to the client. So they have to be at their baseline. That has to be under control before I attempt to do that. And since I am not yet, a licensed professional in that area, that's something that I would work with someone such as yourself. Another one would be that I don't am not able to work with. Unfortunately, is somebody who is schizophrenic, and again, that's someone who does require more than what I'm able to offer. Okay, another one which I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence with, but borderline personality disorder. Okay, now dialectical behavioral therapy is something that is actually it's kind of for that. You can use a DBT for a number of different things, but it is really really good when it comes to borderline personality disorder. So once that person is kind of like at their baseline, then yes, then I can do things in terms of, again, self-love. Okay, which with that type of disorder, as you one could tend to idolize, a person, kind of put them like on a pedestal, and then if things don't work out, then they take it as very, very deep, deep rejection, and it could be harmful to not only them, but they can also self-harm themselves and harm others, as well with that. So again, that's something with the DBT I would recommend with that to a someone such as yourself. But what I would also do, based on the teachings of DBT, mindfulness, and all, I would create a hypnotic session around that. Okay, so that now I am working from the subconscious state, from the teachings of DBT, while you are there, person is seeing a clinical psychologist, okay, during the daytime. Now that's something that I would entertain, but I would not do it by myself, not until that person has been seen by a professional and we have established a working relationship together. So I'm very well aware of what I can do, and hypnotherapy and the modality can do a lot. But at the end of the day, it is the for the benefit of the client and what they're going through, and that has got to that's takes precedence. So that's where I stop in terms of where I know where I stop and where we need to bring in someone such as yourself.
Yeah, it makes sense. And listen, even someone such as myself, I have my limits in terms of my specialties and who I want to work with. Borderline personality disorder is a tough disorder, and
It's
certainly if
hard.
someone is actively psychotic, that can be difficult as well. It's interesting that you bring up schizophrenia though, because I remember reading many years ago about a psychologist, or maybe she was a therapist, out in California. The book is called The Unquiet Dead. I don't know if you've
Mm,
ever heard of it or read of it.
I haven't, but now it's on my radar.
And she talked about how when it came to schizophrenia, actually the voices that people would hear are nothing more than spirits that have not crossed over. And she used hypnotherapy to help them cross over, and would see dramatic changes in people. It wasn't just schizophrenia that she worked with, but it was other things as well. I don't know if listeners out there believe that or not, and it's I don't know this lady. I don't even know if she's still alive, but it was a very interesting short read called The Unquiet Dead. And regardless of whether it's true or not, Miss Kisha Reynolds does that work and can help you with whatever issues you have that you'd like to change, any sort of unconscious thoughts or actions that you want to change. She can do that with you. Give her 8 to 12 weeks, in fact, and she can help you turn your life around. So we are coming up on time here, and there's so much more that I want to discuss with you, but we're going to have to maybe talk about it in another episode at some point.
Sure, I'd love
Um,
to come back.
Great. So, where can people find you to reach out to you and get to know you, or maybe even start services with you?
Well, you can reach me via my website or just email me at Keisha at 321deepsleep.com. So that's my first name is Keisha. It's Kisha and then the numbers 321 deepsleep.com. That is the best way to reach me. And then I'm pretty good at responding back within, a 24-hour time frame, so that's the best way to reach me there. Also, starting, I want to say in the next month and a half, I will have my own podcast, Greg. So I'll probably reach out to
Wonderful.
you and invite you to come on it. Actually, it's going to be called Pull Up and Pour. So basically, what it is a very open forum, and we invite you to kind of probably will be during the evening, like around the 7 o'clock evening time frame. And we'll just say pull up and pour, whatever it is. If you're a wine person, if you do mocktails, if you just do juice, if you like soju, you have your favorite brand of, whiskey, whatever it is. Come on, sit down, pull up and pour, and let's have a conversation. And we'll be talking about a number of different things. So when that actually goes live, I'll reach out to you about that as well.
Send me a message. I'd love to learn
I
more
will,
about it. So,
yeah.
well, all right. I will put your website in the description, and I will put the About Me page in the description. So, if you're interested in learning more about Keisha and talking with her, you can absolutely click or tap that link and go there. In fact, even on your About page, you mention a free 20-minute phone consultation. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, to see if it's something that is right for them because that's important, You don't want to get into something and all of a sudden it does not seem like it's going to be a good fit for a number of different reasons. And I also offer coaching with this. Some people just want hypnotherapy, some people want the coaching. So I do have a framework that I work with from the Grow model, that I institute into along with this. So it just depends on what people want. Some people just want the hypnotherapy. Some people just want the coaching. Some people want the combined too. But within that 20 minutes, that's what we're able to kind of figure out.
wonderful. That's a nice service that you offer. It can't hurt you, listeners. So go set up a 20-minute phone call. Anything else that you would like to share with the people before we wrap up?
Well, not at this point. I do, well, I'm going to say that for the next time I'm on because I'm still kind of working with it right now. But some good stuff coming up on the rises, but I just don't want to say just yet. But, it'll be right and ready for me to share, for the next time that I'm on.
Wonderful. Sounds great. Well, again, Miss Keisha Reynolds, we thank you for being on the show and for chatting with us about what hypnotherapy is and how it can help all of us, myself included. And for those of you out there who continue to listen and support the show, I thank you. As always, it's such a pleasure to bring you interviews like this. If you are listening on YouTube, please do leave a comment if there's someone else you'd like me to have on or a topic you'd like me to discuss. And if I can swing it, I will do my very best. But stay tuned for the next episode where I will have yet another meditation and or conversation ready for you. So until next time, be safe, be well, be powerful.